Okay, picture this. You're standing before this, just immense force of nature, something so powerful, it's literally carving the land around it, grinding away
Oh,
rock.
that's incredible.
And the water, over 168,000 cubic meters a minute at peak times, plunging down. And it's got this amazing green color because of all the ground up rock in it.
Rock flower, yeah. It's really something else.
That's Niagara Falls. And today we're doing a real deep dive into this icon that sits right on the U.S.-Canada border.
It's such a fascinating place, so much more than just the view.
Absolutely. We've dug into a whole bunch of sources. You shared historical stuff, geology reports, cultural takes, you name it.
A really comprehensive look.
Right. Our mission here is to get past that postcard image, uncover the owner stories, how it formed, the challenges now, what keeps drawing people in.
There are definitely some surprising facts, some real aha moments in there.
Totally. Get ready to discover some things you probably didn't know about one of North America's most famous spots.
So where should we start? The falls themselves.
Yeah, let's start with the basics. When we say Niagara Falls, what are we actually looking at? Is it just one giant waterfall?
Good question. No, it's actually a group of three.
Three.
Yeah. You've got the really big one, Horseshoe Falls, that's mostly in Canada.
Right, the iconic curved one.
Exactly. Then, over in the U.S., you have the American Falls and the smaller Bridal Veil Falls. They're separated by islands, like Goat Island and Luna Island.
And the scale is just hard to grasp. How big are we talking, especially Horseshoe Falls?
It's massive. Horseshoe Falls is about 57 meters high, so what's that, 187 feet?
Wow.
And it's wide, really wide, about 790 meters or nearly 2,600 feet across.
Okay, that's huge. And American Falls.
A bit shorter, maybe 21 to 30 meters high, depending on the rocks at the bottom, but still over 300 meters wide. The whole span, all three falls together, is over 1 kilometer wide.
That's an unbelievable amount of water. But you mentioned peak hours?
Yeah.
Does the flow change?
Oh yeah, definitely. The flow rate is actually managed. Horseshoe Falls has the highest flow rate of any waterfall in North America, over 50 meters tall, making it incredibly powerful.
That figure of 168,000 cubic meters a minute.
That's during peak tourist times. But the flow depends on Lake Erie's water level.
Yeah.
And, crucially, it's regulated by the 1950 Niagara Treaty.
A treaty, so humans are actively controlling it.
Absolutely. There's an International Niagara Board of Control. They divert a significant amount of water, especially at night and during the winter, the low tourist season,
Right.
for hydroelectric power. The flow can be cut roughly in half, down to about 1,400 cubic meters per second for the power plants.
Fascinating, balancing the spectacle with energy needs. Which brings us back to that color, that vibrant green. You said rock flower.
Exactly. It's not pollution or algae. It's the falls doing their work. The sheer force erodes the riverbed, grinding rock into superfine particles, rock flour.
And that stays suspended in the water.
Yep. An estimated 60 tons of dissolved salts and this rock flour go over every minute. It's what gives the water that distinctive, almost emerald green color. The falls are literally grinding themselves down and coloring the water.
That is such a wild detail. The falls are painting themselves. And it's not just rock and water, right? There's wildlife, too. You mentioned gulls.
Oh, yeah. It's a major bird area, especially for gulls in winter. Bonapartes, ring-billed, herring gulls. Something like 100,000 of them winter there.
Why so many?
It's on their migratory routes, there's good foraging, and importantly, the river below the falls doesn't usually freeze solid. So it's reliable open water for them. You can see tens of thousands on any given day in early winter.
Okay, that paints a really vivid picture of the falls today. But let's rewind. How did this massive thing even form? We're talking geology now, right?
Yeah, deep time geology. It all goes back to the end of the last ice age, the Wisconsin glaciation, around 10,000 years ago.
So melting glaciers.
Exactly. As these huge ice sheets retreated, the meltwater created the Great Lakes. The Niagara River formed as the main drain for the upper Great Lakes, carving a path through the landscape.
And it carved through something specific, the Niagara Escarpment.
Right. The escarpment is basically a long cliff, a ridge. The river had to cut down through it.
And the way it cut through wasn't even which created the falls themselves.
Precisely.
Yeah.
That's the key to the falls formation and shape. Think of it like layers of a cake, but geological layers.
Okay, geological cake. I like it.
You've got a really hard, erosion-resistant layer on top of the Lockport Formation. That's the cap rock.
The tough layer.
Right. Underneath that, you have softer stuff, mainly shale, the Rochester Formation. And below that, even softer shales and sandstones in the Queenston Formation.
So the water wears away the soft layers faster?
Exactly. The river erodes the softer shale layers underneath, creating an undercut. Eventually, the hard caprock layer above has no support, and huge sections just break off and collapse.
Ah, okay. And that process keeps repeating.
Constantly. That's why the falls have moved, retreated over time. It's this uneven erosion that created the falls and keeps shaping them.
How far has it retreated? It sounds like it must be a lot.
It is. Over the last, say, 11,000 years, the falls have moved about 10.9 kilometers. That's nearly 7 miles southward from where they first formed, near modern-day Queenston and Lewiston.
7 miles. That's mind-blowing. And the shape has changed, too.
Yep. Horseshoe Falls used to be more of a small arch, then it broadened into that horseshoe shape, and now, arguably, it's becoming more V-shaped due to the way the erosion is focused.
So if it keeps retreating, what's the long-term future? Will Niagara Falls disappear?
Well, the erosion rate is slower now, partly due to water diversion for hydro and some engineering. It's about 30 centimeters, roughly a foot, per year now. Historically, it was closer to a meter per year.
Still, a foot a year adds up.
It does. At the current rate, projections suggest it will take about 50,000 years for the falls to erode the remaining 32 kilometers back to Lake Erie. And then, essentially, the falls, as this dramatic drop, would cease to exist. It would become more like rapids, the river gradient evening out.
50,000 years. Okay, so we've got some time, but it's a powerful reminder of geological time and change.
Absolutely. And also how human intervention is now part of that geological story.
That's a perfect transition. Let's talk about that human element, especially the efforts to preserve this place. It wasn't always protected, was it?
No, definitely not. By the 1870s, things were getting pretty bad. Access was often controlled by businesses who charged fees. Goat Island was threatened by commercial development. Industry was encroaching. It was becoming kind of a tourist trap, losing its natural beauty.
So people started pushing back.
Yes, thankfully. A conservation movement, the Free Niagara movement, really took hold in the U.S. You had prominent figures like the painter Frederick Edwin Church, the famous landscape architect Frederick Law Olmsted.
Olmsted, who designed Central Park.
The very same. And architect Henry Hobson Richardson. They saw what was happening and were appalled. Olmsted, especially, visited Goat Island and was deeply affected. Church even reached out to Canada's Governor General to suggest an international park.
And Olmsted and James Gardner wrote a really important report.
They did. In 1879, their special report on the preservation of Niagara Falls was a game changer. It basically called for the state to buy the land around the falls, restore it, and make it public. They framed it as a sacred obligation to mankind. Powerful stuff.
A sacred obligation. Wow. Did it work?
It did. It led directly to the creation of the Niagara Reservation in New York in 1885. Governor David Hill signed it into law, making it New York's first state park.
The first state park in New York. That's significant.
And amazingly, Ontario created Queen Victoria Niagara Falls Park on the Canadian side that same year. A really remarkable parallel effort.
That cross-border cooperation is fantastic. And Olmsted had a vision for how the park should be managed.
Yes. He and Calvert Vaux followed up in 1887. Their idea wasn't to add a bunch of man-made attractions, but to restore and conserve the natural surroundings, rather than to attempt to add anything there, too. Balancing access with preservation was key.
That philosophy seems crucial. And efforts continued into the 20th century, like regulating water diversion.
Yes, the 1906 Burton Act and a 1909 treaty started limiting water diversion specifically to preserve the fall's appearance.
And then came that incredible event in 1969. They actually turned off American Falls.
It sounds unbelievable, right? But yeah, for several months in 1969, they built a temporary dam, a cofferdam, diverting the entire flow of the Niagara River over Horseshoe Falls.
Why on earth would they do that?
The U.S. Army Corps of Engineers wanted to study the rock face of American Falls, see if they could stabilize it, maybe remove the pile of fallen rock, the talus, at the bottom, that had built up after a big rockfall in 1954.
So they just dewatered it. What did they find? Anything surprising?
Well, tragically, they found the bodies of two people, a man who jumped and a woman. On the engineering side, they decided removing the talus would be too expensive and perhaps aesthetically undesirable. They did install bolts and sensors to monitor stability.
And then they just turned it back on.
Pretty much. In November 1969, they dynamited the temporary dam, and the water rushed back over American Falls. It must have been an incredible sight. For years after, Luna Island between American and Bridal Veil Falls was closed due to stability concerns.
Just amazing. What about modern preservation challenges? Are there new issues today?
There's always discussion. On the Canadian side, some debate the visual impact of tall hotel and casino developments near the falls. There was even a study suggesting they might increase mist, though that's debated.
And the U.S. said,
Ongoing efforts focus on restoration and enhancing the experience while preserving nature, like recent work on Three Sisters Islanders and upgrades at Prospect Point. It's a continuous balancing act.
okay, that gives us a good sense of the physical falls and the efforts to protect them. Let's switch gears a bit and dive into the human history, starting with the name itself, Niagara. Where does that word come from?
It's actually a bit of a mystery, with several plausible theories.
Oh, like what?
One popular one is from an Iroquoian word, possibly Angera, meaning thundering water. Makes sense, right?
Yeah, that definitely fits.
Another theory connects it to a local First Nations group, the Neutral Confederacy, who are called the Niagara on some early French maps.
Okay. Any others?
Some suggest Anguiara, meaning point of land cut in two, or maybe Janiaco, noisy point or portage. The Mohawk word Anyara means the neck, referring to the strip of land between Lake Erie and Lake Ontario.
So lots of possibilities, all evocative.
And the modern Seneca name is Josquesodo, which translates to the cliffs are standing, also very fitting.
It was clearly a significant place long before Europeans arrived. When did they first see it and report back?
Samuel de Champlain heard about it in 1604 from his party and described it based on their reports, but he didn't actually see it himself.
So who gets the credit for the first description?
Usually, Father Louis Hennepin, a Belgian missionary in 1677. He wrote about it after his visit, though it's possible some Jesuit missionaries saw it even earlier.
And the first scientific look. First painting.
The first scientific description came from Per Kalm, a Finnish-Swedish naturalist in the early 1700s. And the first known eyewitness painting was by Captain Thomas Davies, a British Army officer, in 1762. That really started to bring the image to Europe.
And then came the tourists. It really blew up in the 19th century, didn't it? Became the honeymoon capital.
Absolutely. By the mid-1800s, tourism was the main industry there. Theodosia Burr Alston, Aaron Burr's daughter, and her husband were the first recorded honeymooners way back in 1801.
Wow, 1801.
Yeah, and even Napoleon's brother Jerome visited with his bride. It became the place to go.
We also heard about famous visitors. John Franklin called it the first in the world for grandeur. And Frederick Douglass had a really profound reaction.
Yes, Douglass visited in 1843 and wrote powerfully about it. He said, "When I came into its awful presence, the power of description failed me. An irresistible power closed my lips." It just stopped him in his tracks.
That really captures the awe. And it was also important for the Underground Railroad.
Hugely important. Being right on the Canadian border, it was a major crossing point for enslaved people seeking freedom. There were conflicts, dramatic escapes. The Niagara Falls Underground Railroad Heritage Center does a great job telling those stories today.
It even has a place in the history of photography.
It does. One of the earliest known photographs of the falls is a daguerreotype taken around 1840 by an Englishman named Hugh Lee Pattinson.
A daguerreotype. That's really early photography.
Exactly. And get this, the little silhouetted figure you can see in the photo. It's thought to be Pattinson himself, having to stand perfectly still for the long exposure time.
That's fantastic. Standing there while his camera captures history. Okay, we have to talk about the Iron Scow incident. 1918. Sounds dramatic.
Oh, it was pure drama. August 6, 1918. This flat-bottomed barge, an iron scow, broke loose from his tugboat upriver with two men aboard, Gustav Lofberg and James Harris.
Oh, no. Heading for the falls.
Yep, drifting towards the brink of Horseshoe Falls. They managed to open the dedumping doors and ground it on some shallow rocks, maybe only 600 meters from the edge.
So they were stranded, just above the falls.
Exactly, for over a day. The rescue was incredibly tense, involving the Coast Guard, the Niagara Parks Police, the fire department. They eventually shot a line out using a Lyle gun, and the legendary local riverman, William Redhill Sr., went out hand over hand on the line to untangle it, allowing the men to be brought back in a breeches buoy.
Wow. Redhill Sr., a true hero. And the scow.
Amazingly, the scow stayed stuck on those rocks for over 101 years. It became a fixture. It only shifted significantly during a heavy storm on Halloween 2019, moving about 50 meters downstream. It's still there, though, slowly deteriorating.
Incredible. A piece of history just stuck there. You also mentioned the shape of Horseshoe Falls changing due to human intervention.
Yeah, that's right. Before the 1950s, the northeastern end of Horseshoe Falls was actually in the U.S., near Terrapin Point on Goat Island.
Oh, really?
But landfilling in 1955 extended Terrapin Point, and then more work by the Army Corps in the early 80s filled in more area, effectively straightening that end of the crest line. About 120 meters of the falls was eliminated.
So that's why sources now say it's mostly or entirely in Canada.
Exactly. Human engineering literally reshaped the boundary.
Okay, one last historical question. Did the falls ever actually freeze solid? People talk about that.
The river below the falls often freezes,
Oh.
and the falls themselves get massively iced up almost every winter, creating incredible ice formations. But a complete freeze-up, stopping the water flow entirely, that's only happened once on record.
Only once. When was that?
March 29, 1848. A massive ice jam upstream on Lake Erie blocked the river's source, and the flow over the falls stopped for up to 40 hours.
40 hours. What was that like?
Eerie silence. Mills stopped working, factories went quiet, people could actually walk out onto the dry riverbed. Then the jam broke, and the roar returned.
Unbelievable. And those historical ice bridges people used to walk on.
Yes, before modern bridges, thick ice would sometimes form across the river below the falls, sometimes incredibly thick, like 100 feet thick. People did walk, even set up shanties on it, but it was dangerous. Tragically, in 1912, an ice bridge broke up suddenly and 3 people died. They haven't formed that thick since the 1950s, probably due to the ice boom and power diversions.
Okay, from natural history to human history, and now to engineering marvels, the bridges. Crossing that gorge must have been a huge challenge.
Absolutely. Building over that deep, powerful gorge was a major feat. We saw a whole evolution of bridge technology right there.
What was the first one like?
The very first was a light suspension bridge opened in 1848, mainly for carriages. But it was quickly replaced in 1855 by a much more substantial one, the Niagara Falls Suspension Bridge.
And that one's famous.
Very famous. It was a double-decker, trains on top, carriages and pedestrians below, and crucially, it was used by Harriet Tubman and others on the Underground Railroad to help enslaved people escape to freedom in Canada, a really important historical link.
Wow, is that bridge still there?
No, that one was replaced in 1897 by the bridge we now call the Whirlpool Rapids Bridge.
Yeah.
It's a steel arch bridge, and it's actually the oldest bridge still spanning the Niagara River today.
Okay. And closer to the falls, there was the Honeymoon Bridge. Sounds romantic.
It was. Officially, the Upper Steel Arch Bridge opened in 1897. It was a very popular spot for tourists, but it had a dramatic end.
Oh, what happened?
In January 1938, a massive ice jam in the river pushed against the bridge's abutments with incredible force. The supports buckled, and the entire bridge collapsed onto the frozen river below. Huge spectacle.
Just collapsed. So what replaced it?
The Rainbow Bridge, which opened in 1941, it was built higher up to avoid ice issues. That's the main road bridge closest to the falls today, the one that offers those fantastic panoramic views.
It's incredible how engineers tackled that environment. And that same power, the river's energy, obviously drove industry too.
For centuries, people looked at that water and saw power. As early as 1750, Daniel Jonker built a small mill race, a canal, to power a sawmill. Just the beginning.
Who are the early pioneers of hydropower there?
Augustus and Peter Porter tried to expand the canal idea in 1805. But the first proper hydroelectric generating station came in 1881, built by Jacob Skolkoff. It produced direct current DC electricity.
But DC doesn't travel well. Right, AC was the key.
Exactly. The big breakthrough was in 1893 when Westinghouse Electric, with Nikola Tesla's AC patents, designed a large-scale alternating current system for Niagara Falls. It went live in 1895. That really kicked off the modern era of hydroelectricity.
And big names got involved in funding it.
Oh, yeah. J.P. Morgan, John Jacob Astor IV, the Vanderbilts.
Yeah.
They backed the construction of massive underground tunnels, conduits to feed generating stations. By 1896, they were producing serious power, sending it all the way to Buffalo.
And Canada followed suit.
Private companies did, yes. But then Ontario took a different path in 1906, establishing Ontario Hydro and moving towards public control of power generation and transmission.
Then there was a major setback in the 1950s, a landslide.
Yes, in 1956, a huge landslide destroyed a large part of the biggest power station on the U.S. side, the Skolkoff Station. It was a disaster.
How did they respond?
It led to the Niagara Redevelopment Act in 1957. This gave the New York Power Authority the green light to fully develop the U.S. share of the river's power potential, leading to the massive Robert Moses Niagara Power Plant.
And today, how much power are we talking about?
It's huge. The Robert Moses plant and the associated Lewiston pump generating plant have a combined capacity of 2.4 gigawatts. It's still New York State's largest electricity producer.
And they divert a lot of the river's flow.
Between 50 and 75%, depending on the time of day and year. The water goes through huge tunnels, bypassing the falls completely, spins the turbines, and then rejoins the river downstream.
You mentioned the Lewiston plant is a pump generating plant. How does that work?
It's pretty clever. During off-peak hours, when electricity demand is low and cheaper, they use power to pump water from the river up into a large reservoir.
Okay, storing potential energy.
Exactly. Then, during peak hours, when demand is high, they release that stored water back down through turbines, generating extra electricity when it's needed most. It's called pump storage.
Very efficient. And this is all still balanced with tourism, right? That treaty.
Yes, that 1950 treaty is crucial. It mandates that during daytime tourist hours, roughly April to October, enough water must go over the falls to maintain that unbroken curtain of water. So power generation is reduced during those times.
And the ice boom we mentioned, that helps power generation too.
Right. It's installed each winter. It's a string of floating pontoons that stretches across the river upstream. It helps prevent large chunks of ice from flowing downriver and potentially damaging the power plant intakes or causing ice jams near the falls.
And there was a major tunnel project recently too.
Yes, the Niagara Tunnel project on the Canadian side finished in 2013. A massive new tunnel, over 10 kilometers long and 12 meters wide, to feed the Sir-Adam-Beck generating stations. It boosted their capacity significantly, enough to power about 160,000 more homes.
So constant engineering to harness that power. What about other impacts, like shipping?
Well, the falls are obviously impassable for ships. That's why the Welland Canal was built nearby, connecting Lake Erie and Lake Ontario and bypassing the falls entirely. It shifted shipping traffic away from Buffalo, but allowed industries powered by Niagara's electricity to thrive elsewhere in the region.
Though you mentioned some economic decline later.
Yeah, like many industrial areas, the region faced challenges from the 1970s onwards as heavy industry shifted. But the falls themselves, their name, it lives on Niagara University, airports, even an asteroid named Niagara. Its presence is huge.
Okay, now for maybe the most sensational part of the Niagara story. The daredevils. People actually going over the falls or walking across the gorge. It sounds insane.
It absolutely captures the imagination, doesn't it? The sheer audacity. And it started quite early, though maybe not with humans initially.
What do you mean?
Well, one of the first big spectacles back in 1827 involved sending an old ship, the schooner Michigan, over the falls. They loaded it with animals, buffalo, bears, geese, a dog, and effigies of people.
They sent animals over, seriously.
Seriously, it was a P.T. Barnum-style publicity stunt. Apparently, the bears jumped free before the plunge, and the geese flew off, but yeah, grim beginning.
Okay. Then came the human jumpers, into the gorge below.
Yeah. Sam Patch, who called himself the Yankee Leapster, famously jumped from a high platform into the gorge below the falls in 1829 and survived. He became a folk hero.
But not everyone was so lucky trying to conquer the rapids.
No. Captain Matthew Webb, the first man to swim the English Channel, tried to swim the Whirlpool Rapids below the falls in 1883 and drowned. The currents are incredibly dangerous.
But the ones who really became legends are the barrel riders, starting with Annie Edson Taylor.
Annie Edson Taylor, October 24th, 1901. A 63-year-old schoolteacher. She decided going over the falls in a barrel would bring her fame and fortune.
63 years old. Was she the first person to try it?
The first person known to go over and survive. And remember what we heard earlier.
Oh, right. She sent her cat over first.
Yep. Sent her cat, Ionia, over in the barrel for a test run a few days before. The cat survived. So Annie figured, okay, my turn.
Unbelievable. And she survived.
She did. Battered and bruised, with a cut on her head, but alive. Her first words were reportedly, "No one ought ever do that again."
Did people listen?
Not really. The allure was too strong. It's illegal now, of course, huge fines and potential jail time on both sides. But others tried. Charles Stevens died trying in 1920. His anvil, meant for ballast, tragically went through the bottom of his barrel.
Oh, horrific. Who else survived?
Bobby Leach went over in his steel barrel in 1911 and survived, but broke both kneecaps and his jaw. He needed rescuing by that same Red Hill senior who helped the Scowmen. Jean Lucier survived in a large rubber ball in 1928.
A rubber ball.
Okay.
And then there was that incredible survival story in 1960, the miracle at Niagara.
Just astonishing. A small boat lost power upriver with 3 people aboard. 17-year-old Dean Woodward was pulled from the river by bystanders just feet from the brink of American Falls.
Wow. Close call.
Her 7-year-old brother, Roger Woodward, went over Horseshoe Falls wearing only a life jacket.
A 7-year-old over the falls.
Yes. And incredibly, he survived the plunge. The crew of the Maid of the Mist spotted him in the turbulent water below and threw him a life ring. They rescued him. A true miracle. Their uncle, who was driving the boat, sadly did not survive.
That is unbelievable. Just defies logic. Have people tried it in more modern times?
Oh yeah, Carol Selchek survived in a barrel in 1984, got fined, then tragically died the next year trying to recreate a similar stunt in Houston. Steve Trotter was the youngest survivor in 85 and did it again with a partner in 95.
Even teams tried it.
Peter DeBernardi and Jeffrey Petkovich went over together in a barrel in 1989. But there were more tragedies, too. Jesse Sharp tried it in a canoe in 1990, no helmet, no life vest. His body was never found. Robert Overacker tried on a jet ski in 1995 with a rocket-propelled parachute that failed. He plunged to his death.
So dangerous. And some people have survived going over unprotected, without a barrel or anything.
It sounds impossible, but yes. Kirk Jones famously survived an unprotected plunge over Horseshoe Falls in 2003, seemingly on purpose. He was fined and banned. He died attempting it again in 2017 in an inflatable ball. There have been a few other cases since 2003, usually suicides who unexpectedly survived the fall. It highlights how unpredictable survival is.
Just incredible stories. Now, what about the tightrope walkers? They weren't going over the falls, but across the gorge, right?
Correct. A crucial distinction. They walked on tight ropes, strung high above the Niagara Gorge, downstream from the falls, usually near where the Rainbow Bridge is now.
And the most famous was Blondin.
Jean-François Gravelet, known as the Great Blondin. He was the first to cross in 1859. He did it multiple times, adding crazy stunts blindfolded, pushing a wheelbarrow, carrying his manager on his back.
Carrying his manager.
On his back. He became a global sensation. The Prince of Wales even came to watch one of his crossings.
Amazing. Was he the only one? Was there a woman who did it?
Yes. Maria Spelterini, an Italian woman, crossed in 1876, the first and only woman to do it, and she added her own flair, crossing blindfolded, with her ankles and wrists manacled, even with peach baskets strapped to her feet.
Peach baskets on her feet. Incredible skill and nerve.
Absolutely. A real pioneer.
And then, much more recently, Nick Walenda brought high wire walking back to Niagara in a big way.
It was huge. In 2012, he was the first person to walk on a wire directly over the falls area in over a century. His walk was further upstream, near the brink of Horseshoe Falls, from the U.S. side to the Canadian side.
That must have required special permission.
Big time. Legislation had to be passed on both sides. It was a 550-meter walk, the longest unsupported tightrope walk in history at the time. And famously, he carried his passport and presented it to Canadian officials upon arrival.
A very symbolic act. What an image. Okay, from daredevils to the millions who visit just to look. Let's talk tourism and culture. It's a massive draw, right?
Huge. Peak season is summer, of course. The falls are floodlit every night, creating a really magical spectacle. Visitor numbers are staggering. Projections were heading towards 28 million annually over a decade ago. It's one of the world's top tourist destinations.
And the Maid of the Mist boat tour is probably the most famous attraction?
Definitely the oldest and best known. It's been operating in some form since 1846, taking people right into the misty basin of Horseshoe Falls. It's named after a mythical Native American figure, though that caused some controversy later. Yeah, in the 90s, some Native American groups objected to the recorded narration, telling what they considered a fabricated legend, and the company eventually stopped using it. Shows how interpretations change. The Canadian boats are now operated by Hornblower Cruises, but offer a similar experience.
What are the main things to see and do on the U.S. side?
Prospect Point Park is great, has the observation tower for views, and it's where you board the Maid of the Mist. Goat Island is a must, incredible views between the falls, and the Cave of the Winds experience takes you down elevators to walkways right near the base of Bridal Veil Falls. You get soaked.
Seems intense. What else?
There's the Three Sisters Islands, connected by bridges, very scenic. The Power Portal near the old school cuff site has a statue of Nikola Tesla. Helicopter tours give you an amazing aerial view. And there's the Seneca Niagara Casino and Hotel right there, too.
And on the Canadian side,
Right.
often said to have the more panoramic views.
Generally, yes, because you're looking across at both American and Horseshoe Falls. Queen Victoria Park is the main area. Beautifully landscaped gardens, great viewing platforms, and underground passages for the journey behind the falls experience.
Journey behind the falls.
Yeah, you go down in elevators and walk through tunnels that open up onto observation decks, almost directly behind the sheet of water of Horseshoe Falls. Very loud, very misty, very cool.
What else stands out on the Canadian side?
The Skyline Tower offers the highest viewpoint. There's the Whirlpool Aero Car, a cable car that goes across the Niagara Whirlpool downstream. Lots of shops, restaurants, two big casinos, Falls View Casino Resort and Casino Niagara. And the Niagara River Recreational Trail is great for walking or cycling along the gorge.
So, tons to do. But beyond tourism, Niagara Falls has seeped into popular culture, hasn't it? Movies, books, music.
Oh, absolutely. It's been a backdrop and a symbol for ages. That 1953 movie Niagara with Marilyn Monroe really put it on the map for a new generation, made it seem glamorous and dangerous.
Any other notable film appearances?
Superman 2nd had a key scene there. Parts of Pirates of the Caribbean at World's End were conceptually set there, linking it to the edge of the world. Even Woody Woodpecker had a cartoon called Niagara Fools. And the magician, David Copperfield, made the falls vanish in a TV special in 1990.
It's inspired writers, too.
Definitely. H.G. Wells used it strategically in The War in the Air. Numerous poets like Jose Maria Heredia from Cuba, Americans like John Neal and Lydia Sigourney were inspired by its power and beauty. Mark Twain even wrote a funny piece about Adam and Eve being disappointed by it compared to other wonders.
And music.
Composer Frédéric Groffet wrote a Niagara Falls suite in the 60s, commissioned for the opening of the big hydro project. Michael Dougherty wrote a concert band piece called Niagara Falls in the 90s. It definitely inspires soundscapes.
And finally, visual art. It seems like every landscape painter had to paint Niagara Falls.
Pretty much. One art historian called it the most popular and tritest single item of subject matter in 18th and 19th century American art, meaning it was painted almost too much.
Okay. So it was iconic, but maybe overdone.
But artists rushed there to use every new technology, engravings, lithographs, those early daguerreotypes like Pattinson's, even early movies. They all wanted to capture its unique power. Frederick Edwin Church's painting Niagara from 1857 is probably the most famous masterpiece capturing its scale and light. Thomas Cole, Albert Bierstadt, all the big names painted it.
Wow. So we've covered a lot of ground today. From the sheer geological force that's still shaping the land, to the human story, the preservation battles, the harnessing of power, the daredevils, the art. It's quite a tapestry.
It really is. You see this constant interplay between this immense natural power and human ingenuity, ambition, and sometimes maybe folly. It reflects so much about our relationship with the natural world.
It really does. Okay, as we wrap up this deep dive, here's something to think about. We know the falls are geologically temporary, constantly eroding, even with our interventions. They will eventually disappear.
Right, in that very long-term view.
So looking ahead, maybe not 50,000 years, but in our time and the near future, how do we continue to manage this relationship? How do we keep balancing the urge to use its power, enjoy its beauty, profit from it, with what that early report called the sacred obligation to preserve its wild, powerful essence for generations to come? It feels like a question that's always evolving, just like the falls themselves.